So we gotta talk about all the news and reports that have been coming out lately surrounding the next generation of consoles, and it seems like we're gonna get our first next-gen console in 2027, which is gonna be the next generation Xbox, and the information about that is wild. So, according to Jex Corden, who's a pretty reliable leaker and insider, he comes out with some stuff that is pretty spot on at the end of the day. He's not just some random scrub. According to him, the next generation Xbox is going to be less of a traditional console and more like a user-friendly gaming PC that runs Windows and everything. It functions entirely like a gaming PC would, except it has set specs and is just an Xbox brand slapped onto it. I don't know. It's not known if you're actually going to be able to upgrade them, replace parts, or anything like that, but it seems like it's going to be a lot more in common with, let's say, the Alienware Alpha and the Steam machines, if you remember those consoles back in the day, than an actual, like, traditional console like the Xbox Series X or Xbox Series S or PlayStation 5. So that's going to be fascinating. That's going to really just change the entire console experience as we know it, for the better, I would say. But the other component of that is that the entire appeal for consoles, like the reason why a lot of people have a console over PC, is the introductory price being a lot lower than getting a brand new gaming PC and starting over from scratch. So me, for example, I got my new PC September of last year, about 6 months ago, and it cost me about $1,800 for the entire computer. I got it pre-built, but even if I got all the parts by myself, it wouldn't have been that much cheaper, actually. So I actually got a pretty good deal out of it. It had an RTX 4070 Super, an AMD Ryzen 7 7800 X3D, which is a really good CPU. My GPU is also really good. It's like not entirely high-end, but it's like the high mid-range, if that makes sense. It runs games pretty much, you can max everything out at 1440p, but not necessarily at 4K. So that's like the only big difference, but I have a 1440p monitor anyway and not a 4K one, so I don't really care about that. But then I spent another $600 on an 8TB SSD. So all in all, I spent $2,400 on a new PC. It was really more like $2,200, $2,100 after the credit card stuff that I was able to do to make it cheaper. Like, I got $200 gift card for opening up the Amazon credit card right then and there to knock the price off that way. And then I also got more cash back on top of that, which was like another, like, I don't know, 50-something dollars. So it was a little bit cheaper. If you know how to play the credit card game, you actually are able to spend a lot less money than you otherwise would. But the whole point of this is that, yeah, it's a lot scarier spending that much money on a new PC than just spending $400 or $500 or even $600 on a brand new console. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because apparently they are not going to be selling the next generation Xbox at a loss. They're selling it as a hardware machine that they're trying to make a profit off of, because they're making pretty much a custom-made gaming PC. There's a very good chance they're going to be charging $800, $900, maybe even $1,000 for this new Xbox console, and I'm putting that in air quotes. You can't see me because I'm not on camera right now, but that's going to be very interesting to see whether or not this is going to fail completely, or if it will have at least moderate success, because there's no way. I mean, Microsoft has pretty much indicated they don't care about whether or not they sell more units than Sony or Nintendo. They're more in the service industry than the hardware industry, if that makes any sense, because of Game Pass, because of all these different things that they're trying to do, putting all their games on other competing consoles. Like, holy shit. Yeah, it's crazy the way that it's digressed and what Xbox has become over the years. But that's where we're at right now. For the last, 12 years or so, Microsoft has been handing each console generation to Sony on a silver platter. Sony doesn't even have to try to compete anymore, because Microsoft just doesn't even try, because they're in a different market as far as they're concerned. They're the Netflix of video games, not an actual video game distributor or publisher or whatever you want to say. Like, they are in the sense that they, to bolster Game Pass, but that's all that they give a shit about now. Okay, so we'll see how that plays out. I assume that also means if they're going to release a new Xbox in 2027, that's probably going to be around the time frame that the PlayStation 6 releases. And then that also begs a lot of questions, because it doesn't really feel 5 years into this current generation. And yes, it has been 5 years. The consoles came out in 2020, guys. The Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 came out 5 years ago. Despite all the issues, it wasn't really until, I would say, mid to late 2022 that the shortage was over and people were actually able to get the consoles if they wanted one, because for a while, like, it was really difficult to actually obtain one. But it still feels like we haven't really gotten started, that there's just really not that much that this generation had to offer. And when you picture the fact that, like, there's way more years behind this generation than there are ahead, like, you know that logically deep down, based on every console generation before lasting about 6 to 7 years. So if we do get new consoles in 2027, it's completely within the time frame. But I think it's just such an underwhelming, probably the most underwhelming console generation we have ever had in all of history, that it's just wild to me. I mean, we still have new games that are coming out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Not as much as there used to be, like, the last year or 2 years, but the fact that the Call of Duty game that's coming out the end of this year is going to be released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is insane. Absolutely insane. And you look at all the iconic games that have come out this generation, a lot of them, like God of War Ragnarok, Horizon 2, Elden Ring, they all got PS4 and Xbox One releases to them. Even Pow World has an Xbox One version. There are a lot of big games that finally ditched the old consoles, but a good chunk of this generation's library, the point I'm trying to make, they got PS4 and Xbox One releases to them. So I just think it's, like, crazy when you think, like, yeah, this console generation is almost, like, in its twilight and approaching the end. But whatever Microsoft's doing, I think that Sony is going to continue their approach of, they're going to keep releasing games on PC, but they're going to have dedicated consoles. They're going to be focused on delivering a more traditional console experience, especially compared to what Microsoft is apparently trying to do next generation. And then, of course, there's the Switch too, and Nintendo's going to be doing their thing, but their console releases don't really fit neatly within the traditional console generation, because they released the Switch, like, halfway between the 8th and 9th generation, and the Switch 2 is going to come out, like, a couple of years, supposedly, before the 10th generation consoles, but it's also, from a tech standpoint, in terms of specs, is going to be way, like not even close to being on par with a base model PlayStation 5, never mind PlayStation 6. So can really consider it part of the same generation. It's like even the Wii, which came out the same time as the PS3 and 360, roughly, right? Because the Wii came out in 06, the PS3 came out in 06, and the 360 was in 05. It still doesn't feel like we're talking about the same generation, even though we were, but, like, just from a tech standpoint, and, like, as far as all the big AAA releases, they were all, like, at a certain point, they were all only on PlayStation 3 and 360, and not on Wii. I mean, the Wii continued to have its own third-party support, but it kind of felt detached and separated from the actual mainstream console experience. So, yeah, I don't know how to throw Nintendo in there. It's going to be interesting what they do, too, of course. But Sony seems like they're going to have another pretty much monopoly over the console market. And Microsoft is going to turn their focus away from the traditional video game console. So it's going to be, yeah, I wonder what's going to happen and how things are going to play out. But just from a game standpoint, like, this has got to be the most disappointing, underwhelming console generation that we have ever had in history. Like, I feel like I definitely said the same thing, like, 5 or 6 years ago, talking about the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but, oh my god, that feels like a fucking golden age compared to what we have now. I mean, I'm a PC-only gamer now, so it kind of feels different for me. But going from PS4 to PS5's got to feel like an obvious downgrade for most people. Not in terms of specs and power, but just the overall, like, lack of compelling games to play. And apparently they've already got dev kits out for Call of Duty 2026, which is probably not going to get a next-gen release, but I think they just have the dev kits out just so they can test it and see what technology they're working with. There's a reason why there's Xbox dev kits out, but not PlayStation 6. That's because Activision, of course, is owned by Microsoft, so they have exclusive access, and they're like kind of considered an in-house developer at this point for Microsoft and Xbox. So they're just testing it out pretty much. I don't think it's going to be 2026. It looks like it's going to be 2027, late 2027, when these consoles are released. So let me know in the comment section, how do you overall feel about this, about the consoles already coming out just 2 years from now, despite this console generation being underwhelming for the most part? But that being said, as someone who plays on PC, my PC destroys a PlayStation 5 and Series X to the point where I wouldn't want that technology to continue to hold back gaming for so many years. But that being said, realistically, what's going to happen, it's going to be the same as what happened this current generation, maybe even worse, because the consoles are more expensive this time around, inflation is crazy, people's wages aren't going up, and it's just a lot harder for people to afford gaming and a brand new device that people aren't going to be ready to move on until probably like 2030 or 2031, because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't feel like, for anyone, not just me, that this console generation ever really got started. But technology's got to move on, and they eventually need to give us more powerful hardware to work with, because as impressive as the PS5 and Series X were in terms of specs and performance back in 2020 when they came out, now in 2025, yeah, they're starting to show their age and their limitations. So it's a good thing overall. We'll just have to wait and see how things actually play out.